Well, thank you, Ro, and thank you, Ken, and thank you, Ocala, for inviting me and having me here. Once again, I'm introduced to a new part of the country that I haven't been to before. Oh, but it's Valentine's Day. I do see some couples here, so if this is your Valentine's date, leave now. There's still time. Seeing Ocala for the first time has been fun. We took a tour of the power plant this morning. It's exciting to see Ocala getting involved in innovation, small business, so that's wonderful. Just a couple of disclaimers. Well, Ken runs the tightest ship that I've ever been a part of in terms of punctuality. And the last time I gave this talk in Pensacola, I ran a little bit over. So Ken, through our work at NASA, I decided that we would kind of tighten things up for this. So this presentation is in three parts, or stages, as Ken likes to call them. And we've agreed that the first stage will transition or separate. We'll have first stage separation at T plus 18 minutes. And the second stage will separate at T plus 26. And then we'll get through to the final one at T plus 45, at which time I'll take questions. And the cattle prod scars are still stinging, so I hope to avoid that this time around. My other disclaimer is, gosh, they gave me wine here, which kind of breaks my rule before a presentation, but so if I start to take off my clothes, you'll know, oh, what the heck. This also fulfills a legal obligation. Okay, so let's get going here. Oh, darn it. Now, how many of you for a second thought that was real? Now, that's what these guys have done to us. They taught us to think that the needs of the computer are more important than our needs. But, you know, my daughter's birthday is, I want to see the picture. No, 89, I got 139 things to do here. I'll wake you up when I'm ready, okay? And this permeates our life. I mean, it's subject to talk. Your TV, it's your television. You have problems turning it on? How crazy is that? You buy a TV, you're spending a bunch of money to buy this flat screen. This is what you see when the most important thing that they show you in the manual when you open it up. Here are the 9,000 ways your television can kill you if you don't do it exactly right. And by the way, you better note the serial number. And then there's a disclaimer. I have my own disclaimer here. It simply says that you know, the state of California has determined this presentation can cause boredom in individuals. And plus, of course, this is almost made in America. Yay, wave the flag, but not quite. We decided not to, which is the way that things are going right now. One other disclaimer before I get started. If you read the bio, Ken alluded to it. It says filmmaker, explorer. I have to, you know, on the internet, you can be almost anything. I have to confess that my filmmaking credentials include The Lost Skeleton of Cadavra, which is a story of a mad scientist who attempts to control the world through cornering the supply of the very rare element atmospherium, while battling the subhuman mutant from outer space who's attempting to also control atmospherium. And the outer space connection, I think that's probably why NASA was interested in me. Or you may know me for my special thanks in the making of the Monkeys TV documentary. But aside from that, I haven't done much filmmaking. I am, however, an explorer. You can see me there exploring the skies. I'm a pilot. Clever viewers may notice the reason that the FAA didn't let me explore the skies for an extended period after this picture. So if you feel gypped in any way that I'm not a real filmmaker or a real explorer, you can leave now. We'll give you double your money back. Okay? All right, now this is the story of my story of, you know, coming in starting to work right out of high school. I started to work. This is 1979. That's me out of high school, programming away on a Lars Perkins ADM 3A video terminal. And then I came across this slide of this guy's Al Pepin. He prototyped and built the actual first cathode ray tube display. So the first time a computer communicated with not a piece of paper and a printer, but actually put it up on a TV screen. So in my lifetime, you know, all 37 years, no, all 52 years of it, we've gone from the guy who invented the first screen that computers could display on to what we have now in terms of the ubiquity of all these screens everywhere. So the entrepreneur part of me is true. These are the companies that I've worked for over my career. One you might know me from is Google and Picasa, and also Idealab, an incubator that we have many things in common with the power plant here. But I was born young, very young, and I started to have questions like this at an early age. You know, what is it about breaking glass that's so important to do when things are on fire? Is there some magical ability that glass conveys to you to put out fires, or is it just broken glass is comforting to hold in the case of fires? You know, I knew what they were saying, but it's kind of like jump to the point. You know, in case of fire, put it out. All right, so the first thing I want to go is part one, stage one, Ken, is number 48. Stage one is it's not you. You know, everything, oh, I'm not smart enough for these things now. You know, I can't figure it out. It's my fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault at all. Nobody can figure this stuff out. And I'll take you back to the early days. When that picture there of 1979, this is the early days of computing. We'll get back to the real tough stuff like television soon. But this is the first manual for the first computer that I built as a high school science project in 1975. It happens to be the computer that Bill Gates dropped out of Harvard to write Microsoft Basic for. And in fact, that's what I always joke is like 1 year, that's the difference 1 year of Harvard can make in your net worth. You know? Anyway, in those good old days, you'd get this thing, you'd make it work. It were good old days, even though you required an oscilloscope to get the computer running. I love this. I love this. On the inside of the manual, if any problems with our software encounter, feel free to give us a call. The software department is extension 3. And the authors of the program, Bill Gates, Paul Allen, and Monty Davidoff, will be glad to assist you. How about that? Direct line to Bill Gates, and he's going to solve your problem. Those were the good old days. But the real question I have when I look at this is, who's Monty Davidoff? Don't follow his stock picks. You know, he's the guy in the background going, oh yeah, these kids, they think they're up to something. I'm going back to work for Raytheon. This is nothing. Now, of course, things are a little bit more complicated. This is the phone that greets you in the hotel room. Holy cow. You know, what does that do? You know, to use the phone, push line 1 or 2. Well, you've got to push one of them. Why isn't one of them already pushed? You know, it's not going to do anything unless one of them is pushed. Why put it there? And what kind of phone requires, you know, these pictograms? Look at all this text. Look, you know, what happens if you have to dial 911? Or as I heard Alec Baldwin on TV say to his assistant, dial 912, 912, 912. And his assistant says, well, what's 912? He says, it's 911 for rich people. So, I mean, you know, if you have to put stickers on something that tell you how to use it, that's kind of a failure, I think, right off the fact. I mean, there are only stickers on this, and it does, by my calculation, like 973 times as much as that does. But if you like this kind of user interface, it's available for your home. Go out and buy one of those. It's a wonderful thing. It'll kill you. So user interface is the design of conveying information. We'll talk about how that information is conveyed. But let's look at some examples just so we can know we're all in this together. Sometimes too much information is conveyed, like, I know this, you know. It's, okay, you don't. And sometimes information is conveyed that actually confuses you. Now, what do you think? Which button makes you go up? Which one makes you go down? If they took the arrows away, it would be easier to understand. The top button you go up, the bottom button you go down. Now you're going, And there's another issue I'll come back to now as elevator buttons remind me, is the issue of latency. How quickly after I do something do I get a response that told me I did the right thing? You know? And oftentimes, I travel a lot, oftentimes I'm at a hotel, I press the elevator button and the light doesn't come on. I press it again, I press it again. Oh, and then the door opens. So the elevator's saying is, I was gonna be here in 5 seconds, I didn't think I had to let you know. Like, no, it would have helped. You know, if even 5 seconds, I don't want to wait 5 seconds. I go, God, is that button working? You know? So that issue of latency, this gives us a little comfort. It's like, oh, okay, I did the right thing. Something's going to happen. Then moving on, you know, sometimes there's little teasers. I love these teasers. You can just imagine these, you know, maniacal engineers in the back room figuring this stuff out. You know, trying to print something on Windows. Sorry, can't connect to the printer. But, see the details. Thanks, going to help me on this one, I can tell. Operation failed with error 0x000002. Oh, if it was only 3, you know, then I would have known. But 2. I mean, with all the computing power we have at our disposal now, you can't tell me the thing's unplugged. You don't know it's unplugged. You don't tell me that. Don't just tell me you can't connect. Oh, it's not my problem. Then you know, this is crazy stuff. You can't write this. Sorry, somebody writes it. Every once in a while I use a product and I have to snap a screenshot of it because it's like, please help. Why didn't you upload any pictures? Click cancel to tell us. Well, now, cancel is the first button I'd be looking for if I wanted to tell you something. Secondly, there's no cancel button. And you're wondering why I'm not using your product to upload pictures? So this is technology, but it's getting worse. It gets worse, because every day, I travel a lot, every day starts with a mystery. It starts with a big mystery. Do you know what I'm talking about? How does the shower work? You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. You go up there, you look at that thing, you're like, left cold, right, the red's on this, You know, how about this one? It's so non-obvious that they had to put type instructions. You know, this is an item that most people use every day of their life, and we haven't figured out how to make it obvious that, you know, hot, do this for hot, do this for cold. Plus they put it in little type, and you're not wearing your glasses, you're in the shower. Like, what was wrong when we just had 2 knobs, one hot, one cold, you mixed them, they came out, you know. I'll tell you what was wrong. That's what's wrong. I just saw this a week ago. 2 cold buttons, see, gotcha. Gotcha, you guess. And then showers also have this problem of latency. You turn them in one direction. Nah, it's still cold. It's still cold. How long do you wait? What's the approved period of time? Like after 10 seconds, you're like, okay, it must be the other direction. It's still cold. You know, maybe I didn't wait long enough. I mean, this is something we use every day. It's crazy. But being the masochist that I am, I travel a lot, I decided to take on the next level of challenge beyond the shower. I decided, I gotta check the time here, God, I'm just kidding. I decided that I was gonna take on the challenge of setting the time in every rental car that I'm in. Now think about it. Clocks have been around for a while, and you usually walk in, you'd see a clock, it tells the right time, because point of pride, you know, you keep it set to the right time. Then we got these bank clocks, right? And they're always off because we couldn't figure out how to. Now every time you get in a rental car, like, hey, here's this great clock, but it's always the wrong time. So I decided, you know, I'll figure out how to set these clocks. There's lots of different ways to set clocks, but pretty much, even without a college degree, I figured out how to do it, and I think it's possible even if you have a college degree. So we went on to the next phase. Hotel clock radios. Okay? So here's a selection that you find in various hotels. You got to learn each one. They've all got different buttons. There's no standardization. And in particular, there's one that, again, sort of grabs me with its, well, non-obvious design. How about this guy? Now, you don't laugh yet. I haven't given you the punchline yet. Wait for my signal. Where is the power button? There isn't one. Now you think these guys at Sony are sitting around going, Yeah, you know, I don't think the customers really understand that whole power thing. What we need to do is just press the button for the mode that they want, CD or radio. We won't necessarily tell them which one. Or this other thing. You know, how do you turn it on? It's the thing that you do every single time you use it. By definition, you can't use it unless it ought to be the biggest button. Okay? Crazy. But still, I managed, just like in those rental cars, I managed to set these clocks, and the clock radios everywhere I went. Until July 8, 2011. And then I met my match. At the Grand Hyatt Hotel in New York, I met my match, and it's called the Geneva 300D. And here it is. It's a thing of great beauty. European design, no visible buttons. It's fabulous. Except its time was showing an hour and a half off. So I figure, okay, it was a little challenge, like doing a crossword puzzle for me, you know, poking around on the thing, where's the buttons? I'm not going to give in and look at this, you know, any instructions. I go in there, can't find any. You got some buttons that appear when you float your hands over them. Oh, by the way, you can see how there is one display there vaguely. Can you see where it says iPod? Because the iPod's plugged in. Now, there are times, believe it or not, when your iPod's plugged in, you want to know the time also, but that's a separate issue. But I gave up. I couldn't set this thing. So what did I do? You know, they put a big sticker on the side, Hyatt in their infinite wisdom, setting the alarm. Here's how you do it. I follow the instructions perfectly. Doesn't work. Now I'm really frustrated, but I leave it for the next day. Next morning, 4 a.m. It wakes me up. And my family. Now I'm pissed. So I go to my court of last resort, I go to the internet, and I Google the user's manual. And I'm in the user's manual. I can't find anything on setting the clock. I can find everything about how it's going to kill me. But I can't find anything on setting the clock. Finally, I'm in Adobe Acrobat. I search for the word, you know, set clock. And there it is. There it is, hidden under the section of test to verify the remote control works. That's where it is. There's no segment says setting the clock. This is how you verify the remote control. You need a remote control to set the clock. Now, what kind of hotel puts radios in the room where you need a remote? Those things are going to disappear. The batteries are going to run out. This is crazy. I say this to my friends who travel a lot. Like, oh yeah, we just unplug it. So we've got to come from a world, you know, 50 years ago where all the clocks showed this right time, and now we live like basically none of the clocks show the right time. It's crazy. But this is a point I'm going to come back to. It's not just, I've talked about the experience of this clock radio, but it's the experience that a company tries to convey. This also reflects negatively on Hyatt. But Hyatt, fortunately, sent me a survey. Do you speak English? Yeah, you sent me the email in English. You probably know that. Did you stay at the Hyatt? Yeah, that's that's why you send me the email. Okay. What kind of meals did you eat at the Hyatt? Well, I ate some lunch. Was it any good? Yeah, it was pretty good. And through this, every single question, was it very good? Was it reasonably good? Every time they say, oh, it was like really good, but it wasn't perfect. Well, why wasn't it perfect? So I said, forget it. I'm just hopping ahead to the point where I can tell you I hate your clock. You know, I can't do this. This is like a whole day's project. When I try to do that, nope. Can't do that. Content length is 0. Can't do that. Anyway, so I fired them. But it's Hyatt. You know, now I'm not pissed off at the Geneva 300D. I'm pissed off at Hyatt. So the experience that you try to provide to your customer extends beyond the individual product to every touch point you have with that customer. We'll come back to that later. Okay, now we get to the TV. So here's my actual drawer at my house. This is my actual drawer. My actual drawer. Okay. Now, I don't use all these remotes anymore because I found one remote that does it all. This is not it because this is the work of the devil. This remote, you can say, oh, this button, turn watch TV. Turn the button. So it'll say, oh, but I don't know what you did. So if the TV's already on, you tell me to watch TV, I'm turning it off. You know this problem, don't you? Right? Oh, I want to listen to music. Well, you know, you already selected that, so I think I'll turn the CD player off. I mean, it's crazy. It doesn't know where to go because it doesn't know where it's been. And you know, with Moore's Law, we've got processors in our, you know, everywhere. You telling me you can't figure this out? I mean, they talk about Apple entering the market with a TV. You'd think the TV market's pretty saturated. Because there ain't one that works. At least one that you feel comfortable using all the features of, So what you have is very affluent people buying high-end stereo equipment, and this is the instructions they have to themselves or pay their installer to write out on how to use the TV. Or maybe they made little cheat cards like this to tell them what to do, what buttons. But in how many households that does the cry go out, honey, can you help me turn on the TV? It really is an epidemic of unusability. I mean, I think about this. Is this really progress? I mean, I get that, What is this? I like more or less. I want more. I want more of everything. Give me more. It's the knob. I know how to turn it and what it's going to do. I mean, but it gets more serious than that. How would you like to go and get the first ultrasound of your baby and you get this? Oh. Doctor, my baby has a pure virtual function call in its plug-in container. Is that hereditary? Now, it's not just the designers of the product. I mean, it's the fact that there's this disconnect between the people that are designing the experience, because they get all immersed in it. They think everybody is using the product. Everybody's using that remote and doing all these, changing the input and wanting to alter the hues. No, it's something you do like once in a while. It needs to be instantly accessible. So that you lose that vocabulary with the designer, and a couple of points that illustrate that. Here, remember America Online, they used to send out these CDs? You pop them, remember? Okay, so they got tons of support calls. It doesn't work, it doesn't work, it doesn't work, it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I think, why doesn't it work? I put it in, it doesn't work. You know what they figured out? People have put them in their CD player. So the number one question that the AOL people had to ask on the support line was, do you have a computer? Again, now you could say, but people are stupid. But come on, it looks like a CD. It says it's got, 1,000 hours free. I'm figuring I get 1,000 hours of music for free. I mean, it's not a dumb conclusion to reach, it's just a disconnect. Now, some of you probably went through this. How many of you got a keyboard that didn't have the any key on it? Happened to a lot of people, and that's why Compaq had to put up the frequently asked question, where's the any key? And of course, they had to come back out and say, look, guys, when we say press any key, we mean press any key, not press the any key. But again, you really can't blame the person, It's you got to blame the whatever. So a lot of this product design, and many of you maybe remember Rube Goldberg. So here's his alarm clock, right? And Rube's descendant now, some of them work for Microsoft. Others went on to design some of this is his alarm clock, by the way. It's, the early bird catches the worm, and blah, blah, blah. But eventually, a cannonball hits you in the nose. But some of his other ones invented, for example, the first portable computer, the first laser printer. My pet peeve now is, these faucets, you got to wave your hands under, This is my pet peeve. You go in there at the airport, you put your hands under them. You jiggle it around. You do how long do you wait? And you start to do a little dance, trying to, whose problem were they solving? It's like, did I go through, I really liked Los Angeles, LAX. It was a great airport, but, turning those knobs in the bathroom, I just didn't, very, not what I want to, and I couldn't believe it. I went into these, I'm so well trained now, again, and I went to the towel dispenser and I stood there like this and I jiggled, and it was manual. All right. Oh man, I'm behind time. I'm gonna really can't. Oh gosh. Okay, I'll now speed it up. So how did it get this bad? Well, a lot of people think it's because their designers were born. A lot of people think designers were born with this congenital condition, but that's not true. Most people who are born with this condition go into politics, not design. So let's talk about the real reason. Okay, here's a graph of technology, from 400,000 BC until my grandparents died. We got the spear, we got the wheel, then comes the gas light, the sewing machine, electric light, telephone, automobile, radio, and television. So when my grandmother died in 1985, whatever, the most complicated piece of technology she had in the home was her television. On, off, volume, horizontal hold, remember that one? Vertical hold, and then that great mystery, the antenna, you know? Okay. But that, you know, maybe it's got, everything that you deal with has less than 10 control options, right? And that's not all in my lifetime, but that borders my lifetime. So, you know, we have the electric light came along, you press the button, click, the light goes on, 0 latency, right? We like that. You press it, you get the, we see that the button's been pressed. Okay, I did something, it heard me, the light goes on, I get feedback, great. I feel, now what would you think if you designed a light bulb that was controlled by a switch that you couldn't see from a distance whether it had been pressed or not, and then the light didn't turn on for a random amount of time? Wouldn't that be frustrating? Who would design such a thing? Ladies and gentlemen, meet the crosswalk. But how many times you go up there, you press that, but you don't know if that guy really pushed it or not, right? He may not have. You know, maybe push it twice because it's, you know. Now, it doesn't mean that technologies that are more complicated are not out in the marketplace, but they're used by specialists. You know, we got organs, you know, 500 BC, you know, the astrolabe, essentially an analog computer for navigation, printing presses, slide rules, telescopes, aircraft used by a very small number of people, analog computers, digital computers, space travel, all these things, very complicated. You can invest a tremendous amount of time in learning how to use them. Incidentally, if you look at that list, all of those items, from the printing press, you know, publishing your message, to navigating, to listening to music, to viewing the heavens, all of this has been mainstreamed, you know, to owning computers has all been mainstreamed. The only thing that left is space travel. So that's what Ken and I are working on, I guess. But in those days, you could spend an enormous amount of time learning to use a computer. It was your job. You only used one computer in your life, and it was at work, and it took you 3 weeks to learn the keystrokes to, you know, this is a Sabre system. Remember those days? And you want a different seat, it's like / ampersand, backspace, 4/4, you know, hop on one foot, and you know, oh no, the window's not available. You know, usability was not a concern, and if you had a question about usability, you go back to the engineers and you'd say, well, how does this work? And they'd say RTFM. You know what that means. It means read the fat manual. Okay. So but we actually have some models for good user interfaces. I maintain that the baby is a pretty good user interface because it doesn't come with any instruction manual, and if you don't figure out how to work it, it dies. And if a lot of them die, the human race dies. And that's very bad for the future. As the old joke goes, if your parents didn't have children, you probably won't either. Now, on Valentine's Day, I thought I'd throw this in because there is an evolution of the user interface after the baby portion. For example, here's after the transition in adolescence from man to woman. Up on the top, we have the man. This one ought to come with an instruction manual. Nah, just a joke. Just a joke, come on. Okay, so let's look at what happens after that. Okay, after that, this is my lifetime or my parents' lifetime. We get television, and then we get video games with increasing complexity, and we get the VCR, the first unprogrammable device, and then it just skyrockets. You know, we've got more devices in our life with more capability. Blow that out a little bit. We then get what I call device computing, because now these computers are in all of our devices. They're in our kitchen, they're in our TV, they're in our car. We've got GPSs, we've got cell phones, we've got video games, we've got music player. They're everywhere. We interact on a daily basis with a ton of them. It started with the VCR, as Ken said, you know, the people who didn't program VCRs, we used to call them the flashing 12 people. You know, and we are all flashing 12 people at heart. This was a hard thing to do, and it was the first time we could interact with a computer, or with a device that had this level of complexity. For most of us, it was, and it was a very challenging task for many people. And many people, you know, it had this capability. You could time shift and record something that came on next Thursday at 3 o'clock. Did you do that? No, probably not. Probably not. This audience might have. Okay, so what I'm trying to make the point of it is that we went from a world, you know, from BC all the way up till 1970, where we have very simple devices in our lives. Now look at what we get on a single computer screen. This is, everybody recognize Microsoft Outlook? Anybody use it here for their email? Okay, all right, okay. So this program easily has in and of itself, not your whole computer, just this program, has hundreds of different things you can do it. An order of magnitude more complexity than the VCR. How can you possibly expect anyone to know how to use every aspect of it. I worked at, I worked at Google, and you get PhD engineers that will be like, hey, how do you change the font size in the indentation? You can't. It's not a matter of intelligence. It's complexity. And the complexity, again, is multiplied. Look at this. This is the number of computers there are in the world. And it's basically 0 until 1995 on this scale. We could make it logarithmic or whatever, but it's been 1995. So we're interacting with all of these computers. And and these are just the computer. This slide is just the actual computers. We also have computers and devices. For example, true story, this is my toaster. I had to reboot it. All the lights were on, nothing worked. I had to unplug it, plug it back in. Rebooting your toaster, who'd have, So the total computing capacity in the world is about 6.4 times 10 to the something or other. MIPS. It's a lot of power. And if I did the math here a little bit, I won't bore you with it, but basically, what's happened in the last 30 years, my son has more computing power in his pocket than all the personal computers that you were accessible outside of academia, industry, the space program, just 30 years ago. So in the last 30 years, we've been forced to struggle with this complexity and how to expose complexity to the average person. Not the specialist, but the average person. And our ability to create technology has outstripped our ability to make it usable. That's it. Okay? So what we have now is this massive discontinuity where the value of understanding technology and building new features into programs is vastly outstripped, both in terms of pay, prestige, the ability to take that and make it usable. So the people who want to make it usable and really fight for the user experience organizationally have a lower position in terms of product design decisions. And that's why you have to have I use these words exaggerated, but you have to have ruthless czars like Steve Jobs say no. And that we will have, just like, it's not like unlike Edison or Henry Ford, making tough decisions that have to be made in the interest of preserving the user experience, ultimately. Okay, and the first computer that most of us used was an ATM. That was our first exposure, and it's only 30 years ago, so much has happened. But what's happened is sort of exemplified by this. Remember this guy? A camera that you didn't have to turn on. You wanted to take a picture, you pressed the button. Click, it took a picture. Now we get things like this. And when we take a picture, it's like, no, I'm not ready. I think, no, that's out of focus. No, the eyes are low. So by the time that it decides it's going to take a picture, the picture's gone. Crazy. And all of these features. Honey, should I do, you want to be in superfine or ultra JPEG this time? It's, what mode are you in? What mode? I'm in take a picture mode, So I think of it, this is a great quote. It's somewhat apocryphal when I researched it, but let's assume that Mark Twain said it. I think he did, but there's some dispute. I didn't have time to write you a short letter. Oh, I'm sorry. I screwed that up. That's an important quote. I want to go back there, but I don't know how to do that. See? Does anybody know how to do it? So it said, no. Okay, so the quote is from Mark Twain. I didn't have time to write you a short letter, so I wrote you a long one instead. In other words, it takes time and effort to make sure that you're telling your story with the minimum facts that is needed to convey your emotion. And editing and taking out of the story is as important as and maybe more important than what you put in. That's exactly the way that I feel about products. So when I translate, I says, I didn't have time to figure out what you wanted, so I gave you everything. And that's what the operative design philosophy has been. Let's put everything into that camera. Let the user sort it out. So it comes down to this one quote of Alan Kay's that is kind of the Bible. It's the one sentence that guides product development and product design in the best. And Alan Kay worked for Xerox Palo Alto Research Center. And this is just this. Simple things should be simple. Complex things should be possible. Right? So you want to dumb down the product and take away features, but you may make them possible if you want, but you want to expose the things that you really want to do in an easy and accessible way. So I took this principle with my work at Ken, and we applied it to the space shuttle. As you can see here, the space shuttle has got a lot of stuff going on at the same time. I mean, I could probably put, most of you I could put in that cockpit, you probably wouldn't know how to fly it. But I'll ask you this question. Redesign according to these principles. How many of you could fly this? Here's the simple is simple, up, down. The complex is possible, advanced options. And doing that, you see, frees up space for an 8-track player and an analog clock and a set of fuzzy dice to impress your fellow shuttle pilots. Okay, so that's a joke. But the principle is there, and we're doing this in cockpit design. Now, I'm a pilot, and we do this in cockpit design now. So a dark cockpit where their lights aren't flashing unless something is wrong. It sounds simple, but it's not the way that the space shuttle cockpit is conceived in a different era. And when you fly in an Airbus 320 right now, it doesn't look like that, I'll tell you. Okay, so how does this happen? I promise to help you understand that, and that's, good people can build bad products. And this is absolutely true. Without the leadership of somebody as a czar looking out for the consumer experience, what do people do when they build products? Well, they do something called groupthink. And I define groupthink as the process by which a decision is made that is too stupid for one person to make it alone. I better get a group. And you know what happens? This happens in a place called a meeting. Okay? And you know what it comes? And here it is. When you hear these words, run. Let's get together to make a decision. So the goal of the meeting is to make a decision. Like, we're going to come out of this meeting with a decision. Nobody's leaving until we make a decision. Wrong. That's not the priority. The priority should be, come out of the meeting with if you can make a decision that's in the interests of the final experience, fine, but don't force yourself to make a decision under this constraint if it's going to be the wrong decision. But what happens, like every meeting, it becomes a compromise. John wants to go to lunch. We've been sitting here for a long time. We got another meeting in an hour, or in a half an hour. This guy's arguing that he wants this processor in it because his buddy's working on this other thing and he wants to do something with this new tech. Okay, I'll give you that. Okay, I'll give you that if you let me do this. So it becomes a process of compromise. Compromise doesn't build good products. Okay, you know what the story is about a committee that designs a horse, right? That's what it looks like. But we think that if these principles that produce good products by any sense were developed, that the ecosystem of the market ought to reward that, and we would see more and more better products proliferate. And that is, in fact, true. Apple right now with trading at $600, and they certainly have been richly rewarded for taking this as a priority. But the fact that why is it so hard for other companies to replicate that success? And that's because the biological ecosystem that we think of as producing the best, most fittest for survival organisms is not the same as the market ecosystem, because the market ecosystem is polluted in terms of the process by things like ego. Oh no, I'm the boss, I'm making this decision, even though I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm making it. No, you can't tell me what to do. It's your competition. Our competition put this feature in, we got to. Patents, we can't do that because somebody else got the patent on it. Fine. We got to get the product out this quarter, else it doesn't mean anything. The CFO says we have to do it, right? So all of these things, antitrust, we can't build that feature that uses, so all of these things affect the kinds of things that and consensus, affect the kinds of things that guide the development of a product. Okay, 36 minutes, 9 minutes to go. Oh, God. So I want to look at the product development cycle here. Okay, we start out, now I started thinking, okay, the initial conception of the wheel was we'll make it round. We developed it, we released it. Hey, the world likes it. Wheels should be round, right? Maybe they started with square and like, hey, we made it round, we get a lot of that thump out of it. Who knows? Now, here we have an example of a broken process where we start with a good idea. My favorite example is Iridium. I'm going to go through this. Anybody know what Iridium is? So Iridium was a project by Motorola that was going to do a satellite-based telephone system. This was done 20 years ago when we had cell phones, but you had to have different carriers. There was bad roaming. Cell coverage was poor. They said, okay, we're going to build a phone. It's going to work through satellite systems. It'll work anywhere in the world. Okay? Great idea. Focus group. Yeah, I'd pay for that. I want that. But here, each one of these spikes says, well, wait a minute, the phone is the size of two bricks. Oh, wait a minute. No, they're like, that doesn't matter. With this convenience, you'll carry that around. You put it in your briefcase. So, by the way, the phone doesn't work indoors. Who wants their phones indoors? You don't need to use that kind of device indoors. You have to use it outdoors. Oh, and given the cost, it's going to cost $5 a minute. $5 a minute for this level of convenience? So what happens is they rationalize each of these bad decisions to the point with great evidence. You get all the MBAs in the world telling you, oh, you're doing a great job. Go to market, lose billions. And they were about to deorbit the satellites, and then DOD came in and picked it up for pennies on the dollar just to have that capability, which is now used at a much lower cost. I have one in my plane. It's great. But it's not a mainstream product. So that's a terrible decision. Billions of dollars. And so the real product design process is to have someone in the organization who can say, no, I hear your objection. No, but we got to pull that back. If we can't make this thing small and less than $1 a phone call and have it work indoors, we shouldn't ship it. Okay, so here's the third part. It can get better. Okay, so the way that we think about design, when you look at a product for the first time, the remote control for your TV, or you get into a car and you're like, okay, where's the windshield wiper? You want to know, first of all, can I do what I want to do? Is it obvious to me that I can turn on windshield wipers at all? Maybe a bad example, we assume that we can, but can I save this document in this way or whatever? Then we want to say, how do I? How obvious is it is it intuitive to me that how to accomplish that function? I see I can do it, but I don't know how to. There's too many dialogue. There's too much going on. I know I can turn on the TV, but it's not obvious to me how. But I know I wouldn't have bought a TV that you can't turn on. So then you want this latency issue to be 0, so it says, did it work? Feedback. And even with TVs now, you're like, bing, and then it's got to warm up. So you want to know as fast as possible, did it work? And if it didn't, or if it didn't do what you wanted it to, how do you go back? Right? I always used to say this is one of the big reasons for the success of the internet is because the browser has a back button. It's like you screw up, you go back. Okay, so just a funny example of things that we know what this we look at this and we know what it does. No, you don't. It's a coaster. Okay, so that's can it do what I want it to do? Obviously, sometimes can get obscured in the way the interface is presented to you. Okay, now I'm going to take you back to Outlook. I'm just going to use it as the poster boy for the poster child for software complexity. It's not the best. It's not the best mail program. It's probably not the worst. But I maintain when you walk into the store and you've got next to Italian conversation, grammar mistakes, diabetes care, you have to put Outlook 2010. It's like a cheat sheet with complexity on the order of learning, Japanese grammar. I think that probably ought to be a warning sign. Okay? Here's the actual cheat sheet of how to use your email program. Okay? Something's wrong. So I went into Outlook and I took, and I'll tell you why I'm particularly attached to this, but I went in this, I counted the number of things that you could do with one mouse click that would change the presentation and put you in a different mode. Now this is not like I press the mouse click and a dialog comes up and I do something else on the document prints. No. This is just one mouse click. Like take the mouse, either move it or don't move it, and release it. How many things? Well, when I went through it was 47. Okay, so I could do 47 things here in this screen. And the reason it's close to my heart is because as my father got older, this was his email client. And one of the things you can do is you can remove a column from there. If you don't know if anybody's done this, is you accidentally tap on one of those column headers, the mouse moves a little bit, you release it, column's gone. No more date received, no more front, no more, you can't see who sent the email anymore. Now think of how many times do you really want to remove the information on the person who sent the email in your email display? I probably would have, never. In general, how many times do you want to alter the display of the columns that show you that? Very rarely, and yet it's exposed at the outermost UI level, which ought to be preserved for the things that are simple, the routine that you want to make simple. Not the complex, which is possible, but it can be buried. So we got these 46 different things we can do here, some of which are painful, and no way to back out, no undo. So one of the things you can do, I've done it several times, is you can accidentally tap on one of these folders because you want to look at something, but you drag it a little bit, it drops it in another folder. So the folder disappears. Yeah, folder disappears. Where did it go? And then it's like, sorry, I can't do anything else. I'm busy copying that folder for you. You got to wait, it's going to take about an hour. Like, no, I don't want you to do that. Where's the undo button? No undo button. So you go in via one path, and then you have to also find that secret passageway out too. You have this two. It's awful. So what are those 46 things? Here are the 46 things. Everything from scrolling your message, which are things you want to do a lot, into open your address book, not because you're not sending a message in that particular mode, resizing the folder pane, expanding collapsible. All these things there, I sorted them by how much you wanted to use them. Like, here's the things that you actually want to do all the time. You want to, compose a new message. You want to, I can't see it really, you want to delete a message. You want to reply to a message for obvious things, right? And you get into things that you want to do every once in a while. Sort by from, sort by subject, resize the column widths. You want to do that sometimes. Then there are things that you rarely want to do, but you might want to, like sort by size of the message. Or, again, these are all things that are exposed in the topmost level of the UI. With one click, no turning back. You do this, there's no undo. This isn't things with a confirmation dialog. I took those out. These are things that just happen. Okay? You enter the task tools mode. Well, I'm always doing that. Okay, so and then lastly, here's the things I never do. Remove a column from my results, or sort by the importance. Some people might do these things, so they need to be able to move around. But move a folder to a subfolder, I maybe do that very, very rarely when creating a folder structure. So we created a little way of looking at this, which is to say, here's a usability scorecard, and here's the frequency of use and how many clicks or how much time it takes to locate and use that feature in the user interface. And what Microsoft has done is they clustered all these things down at the bottom. That's not what you want to do. You want to put the common things down in the lower left-hand corner and make the more rare things. Don't let them clutter up the core experience to the user, but push them deeper into the user interface so that they're there. The complex is possible, but they're not cluttering up the core experience. So this generalized looks like this. A bad product is one where the hard things are easy to do and the easy things are hard to do. And a good product might look something like this. So I just did it myself on the first level of Microsoft's Outlook, but there are obviously hundreds of other things that are further down in the user interface. But you could, by looking at it graphically in the way, you can see where the problems are. You can really visualize. You have an analytical, empirical way of evaluating how usable a product is. Okay, so that's my first point, is that whole mega point about routine, simple, complex, possible, and how to measure it. The second thing is, 15 seconds. Build experiences, not build experiences, not devices. Like I said, with Hotayat, it's not about, it's not that 300, it's the experience, something Apple's been brilliant on. Okay, what's this? This is the world's first hard disk-based MP3 player. I own one. I didn't bring it with me this time. 2 gigabytes. Compaq built it, and they said, we're not going to take it to market. Why? Because the only innovation in MP3 players is they're getting smaller and higher capacity. So these are all the MP3 players. It's just saturated market. We have no interest. This is a device. The only innovation is they're getting smaller, higher capacity, and cheaper. We don't want to play in that market. And you know what happens when you make things smaller, and fast? You end up with a cell phone. It looks like that. You may recognize that from Zoolander. Now, Jobs, and I did all this before Steve's death, so this is not an homage to Steve. This is just using Apple because of his ruthless attention to this is necessary because we don't have the institutional attention to it, though I believe he's built it into Apple, which is why I think Apple will continue to be successful even without him. But he made the decision that says, no, most people think an MP3 player is a device which plays music. I'm like, no, that's not what it is. It's an experience which allows you to discover, acquire, enjoy, and share your music. It's the whole ecosystem. Like before, it's like, here's this thing, put MP3s on it, I'll play it for you. You got to figure out how to get the MP3s on it. You got to figure out where you're going to get the MP3s from. You got to organize. You got to make sure it doesn't, overflow with too many of them. So I told you that. So a quick example of the difference between Apple and a Microsoft approach. This is kind of cute. I'll take you through it very quickly. This is the box that the iPod came in, and what would Microsoft do to the box for the iPod? Oh, it's an upgrade. Oh, we got to put the disclaimer on it. We got to put the rebate. No, don't put these pictures. They don't convey it. We got to tell you what features we got, how much. That's wasted white space. So what you end up is instead of this clear, crisp, comforting experience, you end up with something where the product is completely obscured by these violating labels, and it's the Human Ear Professional Edition with subscription. It's just, Now, the punchline of this joke is that this was created by Microsoft, by their design team, because they were so frustrated by not being given the liberty to carry forward the integrity of the product and the message into the packaging. No, we got to have, got to have all this data on it. So this is not like somebody making fun of Microsoft. This is Microsoft getting so frustrated with themselves internally. So my point, and I'm almost finished, my point is that well, okay. Give me 1 more minute. So we have this build experiences, not products, and consider holistically every touch point that you have with the customer, and have that touch point reinforce a consistent message. We also have, and I haven't added this into the slides yet, why it's going to get better, is that we're going to start taking some of the processing power, which is essentially free now, and we're going to use it to not do the things you want, but to oversee the things you're trying to do. In other words, when you say you want to print something, if 30 seconds later there hasn't been a sheet of paper that come out of the printer, something's wrong. Now why can't we put a processor just kind of serving as your, you know what, something's gone wrong here. Let me see if I can help you figure it out. I mean, it's as if, you go into the elevator, you press the 8th floor, and you only get to the 6th floor. Well, the elevator knows it only went to the 6th. Why doesn't it say, hey, notice we only got you to the 6th floor. I'm going to go figure out why and help you get to the 8th. Now, it sounds like a weird idea, but processors are free. We got you got processors that run my toaster. Can't we have one that makes sure my stuff gets printed? So that's the other thing that I think is a shift. So there's excellence in terms of the product design itself, simple, routine, complex, possible. Then there's considering the holistic experience of touch points with a customer. And the organization that can build that is sort of what initially is like, okay, all of the brand experience, the ecosystem experience should all reinforce some element of the company, okay? And that, it might be easy, or it might be trust. And these are the things, it might be different. These are the messages that Apple has given us. We're gonna make it easy, you can trust us, and you're different, we're different. But you'll notice that this is an unstable, anything tips that off it, and that bowl's gonna fall. And what I think we need to do in the next generation of organization development, and I believe Steve has done this at Apple, is flip that so that it's dynamically stable. When anything diverts it from that messaging, the organization self-corrects. But that'll only happen when we elevate the role of user interface and user experience to the same level that we do for the people that are actually building the underlying technology. That's in play now, and I hope that it'll improve in our lifetimes. But to some, people don't make bad products, organizations make bad experiences. When the organization's needs aren't balanced with the customer, disaster ensues. Like, oh no, we got to ship it before the quarter ends. Wrong reason. Your customer doesn't have any interest in your quarter. Every point where you touch the customer should convey a consistent message. Listen to the customer, but not too much. Customers don't know what they want. As Henry Ford says, if I asked them what they want, they would have told me they wanted a faster horse. As Steve Jobs said, if I asked them about what they wanted in an iPad, how much customer input did he get when designing the iPad? He said none, because it's not the customer's job to know what they want. Democracies don't produce great products because consensus is the enemy of excellence. So those are my closing thoughts. I'm 5 minutes over, Ken, so get the cattle prod out. Thank you to the people who helped me do this, including my wife, who's not here and with me on Valentine's Day, so it's another cattle prod when I get home. Thank you very much. So that was 50 minutes because there was a 10-minute lead in there. Okay, so you can take questions for a few minutes anyway. You get to pick the person you want to ask. Okay, well that was the first hand that I saw there, but maybe we should optimize the traveling salesman problem here.
Does it have an on off button?
We've just proved everything.
Yeah, doesn't work. Shout it to me, I'll repeat it.
Hello, hello.
I did it! Oh my God!
Part of the problem with complexity in today's products is that complexity is tightly coupled with the pricing model. How do we get away from things being complex so we can charge more money?
Oh, you believe now, you're right. And I went through this with the company I consulted for. They're like, look, we can't build this simpler because then there'll be fewer bullet points on the outside of the package, and Best Buy won't buy it because the other guy's got more megapixels. You know, megapixels in cameras is a perfect example. It's the big lie. Picture quality doesn't go up when you get more megapixels. It does to a point, and then it's all, but they started fighting this battle about 14 versus 18 versus 20 so you go there and say, well, this one's 14, this one's 18, I'll buy the 18 one. 18 one that's no reflection of the quality of the picture. So that's exactly the problem. How do you get away from that? You get away from it with leadership. Like the new Canon, the camera that I carry around with the S95 doesn't say how many megapixels it's got underneath it. You need leadership. You need Jobs to say, or a Jobs-like character to say, no, we're not selling in Best Buy, or if we are, we're putting ourselves over in the other table because we're selling you an experience, and the experience is Apple. It takes a lot of work to get to that point, but otherwise, it's changing the field. You can be successful if you change the field. If you go and compete against the commodity device providers, the only way you can do it is on features. So I think you got to change that whole playing field, and you do that by focusing on the overall experience, not on the characteristics of the device.
You made a mention about the Airbus. Do you feel that complexity of the interface was responsible for that Air France crash?
Oh, no. I mean, that could be a whole hour long. Absolutely not. You listen to, it's just simply tragic. You listen to the airplane is yelling at the crew that the airplane's in a stall. I mean, stall, and they literally are flying it with a stick back in a stall until they hit the water. It violates the most fundamental principles of airmanship. Has nothing to do with the user interface. The only issue there is that the joysticks, which control the airplane, you don't get the same mechanical linkage between them. So this guy didn't realize the other guy had it all the way pulled back. You see, so that's the only issue in terms of design. This guy was holding this, he was so scared, he was holding the stick in his belly, he's stalling the airplane. This guy couldn't do anything over here because the left seat pilot has primary control authority. So, yeah. So it wasn't the Airbus per se, but it was fundamentally the bad airmanship, but the Airbus, the small characters of the Airbus exacerbated it.
You confused me, I still don't know how to turn it.
Yeah, well, for $450 an hour, I can solve that problem. Which is what Ann this morning told me she had to pay after they get their TV, is you had to pay somebody else to come over and tell you. Yeah. Buy a Harmony remote and then pay somebody to set it up.
So true.
Or wait till the Apple TV comes out in 6 months.
So my question is this. You said that you had an S95 camera, which I know is a very complicated camera.
Yeah.
But it has an automatic function. Is that not part of the answer? For people who want something that's simple, you set it on automatic,
yeah.
it works
so the
95%
S95
of
does
the time.
one thing. The S95 does something that I admire, which is not try to win on the basis of sensor megapixels. It does many other things badly. And it does have an automatic function, one that you can easily dislodge and not realize that it's dislodged. So that's a frustration. It's got loads of stuff that should be more obvious that's hidden deeper in menus where it doesn't belong. So I think a tremendous amount of innovation is still possible in terms of that particular camera. But yeah, automatic is fine as long as automatic is the mainstream, and you got to do something pretty, not just brush it like that, but you got to do something pretty major in order to get it out of the automatic mode, which is not the case now. You brush it against your trousers, and all of a sudden you're in nighttime scene lit by candles with high detail moon imaging mode.
We have time for one more question.
All right.
I'm a minister and I do a lot of work on social media. And as you're talking about complexity, I'm thinking about, in my mind, Twitter, Facebook. And if you could comment, you know, Facebook has gotten more and more complex. Younger people doesn't bother them. Some older folks it does. And I noticed until Google Plus came along to compete with them, they just keep getting more complex. Whereas Twitter, TweetDeck came along. And it seems like Twitter does not try to get more complex because they had what I like to say, a guerrilla entrepreneur company that came along and just cut them at the knees. And they've never been able to come up with a website that competes with TweetDeck. Whereas Facebook can go on and just complexify. They bought TweetDeck.
Yeah.
And then they put limits on other companies doing that very thing to them. But
right.
Can you comment on that, the differences there, just basically how
well, it has a lot to do with the personality. I work with Ev Williams at Google, and it has to do a lot with the personality of the company versus, you know, Mark Zuckerberg and what they saw as the future of those businesses. Those businesses are really driven by the personalities of their founder, and you know, Twitter stuck to its knitting and you know, just does this, you know, SMS 140 character kinds of micro blogging, you know, and it kept it very clean and very simple, but they're not making money, in the way that Facebook is either. So it wasn't necessarily the right decision for the market. I don't think anybody's done it really well. I think Facebook's complexity that they've introduced has been introduced too close to the surface. So people are constantly like, oh, why did they change this? Why did they change this? Why did they change this? And so I think there's room for improvement, but we're in the Wild West and very, very early days in terms of these kinds of services evolving. So I think it'll get better.
Let's thank our speaker.
Thank you.